In this hand, you're playing a $44 six max tournament. You have 9-8 offsuit in the small blind. Villain 28 has opened from the button to 3 big blinds. It is on you. What would you like to do? Well, in most six max tournaments, people go bananas and they open too much from the button, which gives you a license to 3-bet them more. However, it's an uncomfortable situation. So let's drill that today so you can get more comfortable. We 3-bet here, and the button calls. The board comes Jack of clubs, 3 of diamonds, 2 of clubs. It is on you. Would you like to check or bet? If you did want to bet here, how much did you want to bet? We bet 8 big blinds. The button calls. The turn is the 10 of clubs. It is on us. Would we like to check or bet? We fire 24.8 big blinds, and this opponent folds. So let's break down this entire hand. We discussed why we 3-bet pre-flop. Now on the flop, we bet 8 big blinds. So if we bet about 1/3 of the pot, that bet needs to work 25% of the time as an absolute bluff. And usually you'll get a fold maybe 1/3 of the time. The person just absolutely bricks. So usually you can get away with this bet. Now, this one was a little bit more than 1/3 of the pot, but it's also a very easy board to miss. Most likely your opponent didn't raise and call a 3-bet with a lot of 3s or 2s. The only card they could really connect with on that board is a jack. Now, we get called on this board. This is the thing about 6-max. People get testy. They don't always want to fold right away. So what do we know about this opponent's range on this flop when they just call? Well, there's flush draws and straight draws out there, and a lot of people at lower limits are paranoid about flush draws and straight draws coming in when they have a big hand. So jacks might have been 4-bet pre-flop, so we're ruling that out. 3s and 2s likely get raised on this flop for value and to protect their hand, so we're ruling that out. Jack 3 and Jack 2 don't seem like likely combinations that raise call pre-flop, or 3-2. So we can rule out a lot of the 2-pair or better combinations. Now, what gets interesting is, what about the jacks? Do they ever raise some jacks for value with all those flush draws and straight draws out there? Maybe a few combinations, but in general, I find people really struggle to raise 1 pair for value. So let's table that idea right now. So how about, so whenever you're ranging your opponents, always start with high cards, pairs, draws, and 2-pair and better. And it's always really good to ask yourself what hands they can't have. And one really good rule of thumb is, a lot of low stakes players play fast when they hit their huge hands, when there's flush draws and straight draws out there. So a lot of the times when you start ranging them and you go to 2-pair or better, you can go, no, most likely not, with all those draws out there. So we start with 2-pair or better. Do they have that? No, most likely not. Pairs make a lot of sense. Jack X makes a lot of sense, and always get as specific as you can. You might not be able to do this at the table because you don't have the time that we have right now in practice. But the more you do this in practice, the more automatic it will become when you're at the table. So you'll be able to rattle this off quickly when you go through a hand that you play because you practice away from the table. So here, queens, kings, and aces, most likely 4-bet preflop, so we can rule that out. Jack X, okay, a lot of people don't raise that on this board, so we can say that for sure. Maybe is in there. Tens, okay, sure. Nines, eights, sevens, sixes, fives, fours. Yeah, that all makes sense. Ace 3, ace 2, yeah, that makes sense. Not many suited connectors connect with the threes or the twos, so we can table that idea for right now. So pairs make perfect sense, sure. How about draws? 4, 5 suited, sure. Maybe they raise call that. We're pretty deep. Club draws, yeah, sure, that makes sense. They would probably just call on this board. So here's where things get interesting. We just went through draws, pairs, 2-pair or better. What's left? High cards. Here's something about high cards in 6-max tournaments. If somebody is in position and they just see you continuation bet on the flop, and there's only one high card, it's a super hit or miss board. You either have the jack or you don't in this particular situation. A lot of the times they want to see what you do on the turn. That's one of the benefits of being in position, to be fair to them. If you check on the turn, you likely don't have a lot of the best combinations possible, and now they can attack. So if they just got a couple of backdoor diamonds, or maybe even a 10-8 that just wants to see if it could turn a straight draw, or maybe just an ace high that wants to see what happens on the turn, I don't necessarily believe this player is folding. So when you think about the totality of that range, now you do hit some kind of draw on this turn. So first of all, your opponents don't have flush draws that often. Let's start with that, because every flush draw combination you can think of is exactly one combo. So for reference, let's say you believe a person just called you with all the ace kings. They're on the flop. That's 16 combinations. Just all the ace king high suiteds and unsuiteds. That's 16 combinations. How about ace 4 clubs? That's 1. So there's way more high cards and just random things in random pairs and whatnot, and random pocket pairs than there are flush draws. So on this turn, we got to ask ourselves, is that good for most of the high cards? No. Is that good for most of the pairs? Not for 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s. No. For 10s, obviously, they're pretty excited about that. Jack isn't too worried about that card. Obviously, they don't love it, but they're probably still going to call you. But a lot of the high cards are folding at this point, and you do have a backup plan if you get called. So the high cards don't like this. A lot of the pairs don't like this. The one straight draw doesn't like this. We're crushed if they do hit the flush, and the jack isn't folding to this. So we do a bigger bet here. And I'll be honest with you, this was somewhat impulsive when I actually played the hand. The guy called me on the flop, and I thought he didn't have anything to think about. And usually, if you have a set there or even a top pair, when there's flush draws and straight draws out there, you might weigh the decision of raising to protect your hand just for a few seconds. It was an impulsive decision, but when he called me, I thought, this guy's just floating. I don't buy this. So I fired this turn bet pretty quickly. And in this sample size of exactly one time, it did work. What do you think about my turn bet? Let me know in the comments. If you want more content like this, go to pokerheadrush.com. That website, one more time, pokerheadrush.com.